But I don't really know how to make this quick and fun and easy because it's going to require you reading literature and being open to that. So when I offer the courses, just keep in mind that the only way it's going to work is if you actually, read the book. And I know there's a lot of Spark notes and Snoop doggy dog notes and things like that, but they're only going to get you so far. So here's another example. Okay, so 2003, according to critic Northrop Frye, tragic heroes are so much the highest points in their human landscape that they seem inevitable conductors of the power about them. Great trees are more likely to be struck by lightning than a clump of grass. Conductors may, of course, be instruments, as well as victims of the divisive lightning. Select a novel or play in which a tragic figure functions as an instrument of suffering of others. Then write an essay in which you explain how the suffering brought upon others by that figure contributes to the tragic vision of the work as a whole. This is my favorite topic. I love tragedies, probably the most. And I think the reason I like them so much is because I can identify with flawed people and I find them much more interesting. We'll talk about not perfect people. We don't write about perfect people. I mean, that should give you some, encouragement if you're trying to be a perfectionist. That it's much better to be just flawed and interesting, and you won't drive yourself crazy trying to please everybody. So, anyways, you'll learn a lot from me. If you're considered a great person, everyone's looking up to you, and you've had this talent and this ability beyond everybody else. It seems worse somehow when you make a mistake. And so what's also kind of ironic about it, though, is you're also very likely to make a mistake because as you've been given this power or fame, you start to believe that you're not like everybody else. And maybe the rules just don't apply to you. And I think this is kind of what happened to Nixon. I'm just going to read this part really quick. When I need some light reading, I like to look at William F. Buckley's obituaries. And he talks about Nixon, and he starts off by quoting someone who said, public figures come to be associated with one single achievement, never mind how complex the career. It says, and true, we can say that about Lincoln with the Civil War, Edison harnessed electricity, FDR, as he created the New Deal. But what achievement will Richard Nixon be associated with a generation from now? And of course, we know it's Watergate. And so it doesn't matter how great of a politician Nixon was, everyone's going to remember him for that. And sort of like Bill Clinton, which I think is even more tragic, that he's going to be remembered for Monica Lewinsky. And it keeps going. So the reason why King Lear, I always bring up King Lear, because I think it's a couple of things King Lear says that I think really encompasses the tragic hero. One is, he says, I'm a man more sinned against than sinning. Yes, he is flawed. But the other part of a tragic definition that we have from Aristotle is that there's also something in the universe that is against you. And he also says the gods are against me. The fate. And we know that that's true in Romeo and Juliet because of, the miscommunication, the letter that didn't get there. She dies, he thinks she's dead when she's not, then he kills himself and she wakes up. Part of that's just a lot of bad luck as well. So they have that against them. There's something in the stars, which probably is what made them great in the first place, is also going to make them have to suffer. And so with King Lear, I like using King Lear because not only is he a king, but he's an old king. And with the tragic flaw, and a lot of people would probably disagree with this because a lot of people would say the tragic flaw is hubris, and that's fine because it is. If you look at any of the flaws that we have, I think it all comes back to pride. in my case, if I was trying to write a paper, I would much rather use vanity for King Lear, just because I think there's nothing more sad than an old person who is still vain. So in the meantime, Cordelia can't help him because he's exiled her, and I just want to read this one part when she says, "Nothing, my lord, nothing, nothing, nothing will come out of nothing. Speak again. Unhappy that I am, that I cannot heave my heart into my mouth. I love your majesty according to my bond, no more or less." And what wouldst you do, old man? Thinkest thou duty shall have dread to speak when power of flattery bows? To plainness honor's bound when majesty stoops to folly. Reverse thy doom. And this is the reversal that ends up happening, that's also a characteristic of tragedy, is the king has to go from king to nothing. And some people would say that this is an example of nihilism. There's a subplot where Edgar is also falsely accused by his brother, and same deal, the older father didn't believe, or just jumped to conclusions way too quickly, and he ends up trusting the one he can't trust, and not trusting the one who's actually loyal to him. So and just a side note, it's not until he loses his eyes that he's able to see the truth, and that's a common characteristic of an archetype of the blind, that they're blind, but they end up seeing. And so what Lear, when he meets this Edgar who's been falsely accused, and Edgar goes out to the wilderness, and he becomes what I would say is kind of like this John the Baptist figure. He just messes up his hair, and he's puts this stuff on his face, and he looks just like, he takes off all his clothes, and he's out in the wilderness. And that's, I think it's kind of not nihilism, but like asceticism, as a way of stripping down everything. Like monks that practice asceticism, they're very strict about fasting, for instance, about anything that it's the opposite of satisfying the human passion. So anything that's comfortable or whatever, you take that away. And so when Lear is kicked out by his daughters, and it's raining and storming and everything, and he sees this guy, and he sees, look at this man, nothing but like this worm, and he gets this epiphany, and he says, I got to speak to this philosopher, this guy right here that stripped everything away from him and is just kind of laying in the dirt. He knows, he understands, and King Lear takes off his clothes, and that's the reversal. He takes off his robes. He's done with that, and when he does that, he's able to actually get closer to the truth, especially when your tragic flaw is vanity. And it's not until you strip yourself away from all that vanity that you actually find your truth. But because of that vanity, everyone has to suffer. Even the fool suffers. And so, King Lear's tragic flaw, vanity, blinds him of the loyalty of those who love him most, causing them to suffer as they watch their great and worthy king stripped down to nothing. I have a lot of scratches where I wrote this, like when I try to do. So, as you should too. So when you're trying to write this and you're trying to get it down, just try to get it down first, and then take the sentence and rewrite the sentence. But again, this is the most important sentence, because now I'm going to address the suffering of others, but I didn't want to say just about the suffering of others, because there's that idea that it has to represent like the entire tragic vision of the play. And so I really want to get to the reversals, and I could even, in my examples, mention the fool as his character foil, and the reason, what I'm going to try to get to is they're suffering because they're loyal to him. If they weren't so loyal to him, they probably wouldn't suffer as much. But all of them are willing to die for him.